Welcome to this week's episode on the I Give Life to Life podcast with Coach Nrgy. Thank you in advance for your support, your comments, and for sharing all of these episodes and this channel to your friends, your family, your coworkers, your neighbors, and everyone that you know. This channel is all about providing valuable information on life in general and all matters of the heart. Last week, I spoke on a topic or a topic about getting to know the other person involving relationships and marriages. This particular week, I wanted to piggyback off of last week's topic and talk about you, getting to know yourself before getting into that relationship and before getting married. Getting to know yourself is a huge step of the process, a huge step of what helps make a relationship successful is knowing who you are as the individual and being a whole, complete, a solid individual before getting into a relationship with someone else. That's the key. If you have two individuals who are not whole, who are figuring themselves out, who are unsure in who they are, who are insecure with who they are, then that relationship is already being built on rocky foundation and not on a solid foundation. So it's important to get to know yourself. And some of the ways that you can get to know yourself is asking questions like, what are your beliefs? Figuring out who you are. What are your beliefs? What are your priorities? What are your habits? You have to know what sets you off, what ticks your talker. What are those things that you value? What are you going to put as a priority above, something else or above everything else? In order to know those answers, you have to ask yourself those questions. So when you're communicating with someone or when you're at that stage of dating or getting to know someone, these are the things that it's important for the other person to get to know about you, and also for you to learn about that other person, asking them, what are their beliefs? Do they know their beliefs rather? Do they know what their habits are? Because a lot of times we don't know the things that we do because it's a habit. We no longer recognize that we do it. We no longer are aware of what we do. Those little things that, whether it be constantly tapping our foot or chewing with your mouth open or, having to pace back and forth whenever you're having a deep conversation. All of those little things like that are habits. And will your habits affect the other person? Will your habits annoy? I'll say it that way. Will your habits annoy someone that you're dating, someone that you're getting to know, someone that you are in a relationship with or considering being married to? Those habits can build up and those habits can add up and really start, adding frustration between two people. And so it can be something as simple as that you know about yourself as the individual person that you can express and that you can talk about, and that, again, that you are aware of, so you can bring it up in conversation with the individual that you are getting to know, with the individual that you are dating and in that relationship with. Other questions to ask yourself in order to, to figure out how well do you know yourself? What are your limits? What are your limitations? How far will you go for a certain goal? How far will you go for love? How far will you go for achieving something that you put a high value on? And then how far will you go for those things that you really just don't value? What are your limits? What are those things that everyone has a stopping point. Everyone has a breaking point when it comes to anything. So how far will you go when it comes to those usual things, the things that we will end up running into on a more regular basis, on a daily basis, when it comes to ourselves and when it comes to just going through the day-to-day life activities, and especially when it comes to being in a relationship with someone else. What are your limits when it comes to love? Are you open to an open relationship? There are a lot of people who are still into having an open relationship. What are your limits? Are you in agreement with that? Is that something that you are willing to be a part of? What are your limits when it comes to the decision of moving in together and living together, or what will be called shacking up if there is no marriage that's already in place? So, what are your limits? There are a lot of people who, especially in this day and age, and with the millennial and younger generations, they feel it's important to, I guess, what do they say? Try the milk before you, or test the milk before you buy the cow, or test drive the car before you buy the car. I can tell you, I personally don't agree with that, or I personally don't, yeah, I don't co-sign that, so I can't even think of exactly how it's said, but basically, it's about trying it before you buy it, so to speak. And so, with this day and age, millennial generation as well as the younger generations that are coming up, they believe heavily in trying it before you buy it, and moving in together, shacking up, and making house, basically, living the lives and playing the roles of being married without actually being married, without actually taking that commitment, that step of commitment, without actually saying, making that covenant, and without exchanging those vows and expressing those vows. And so, what are your limits when it comes to that? Are you okay with moving in together? For whatever reasons. A lot of the reasons are put on finances, being able to share finances or combine finances in order to help save on expenses. Another popular reason that people will shack up together is because this is the best way for, me to get to know you, or for you to get to know me. What better way than to actually go ahead and move in together, and let's wake up to each other every day and go to sleep with each other every night, and let's see what those habits are. And so there are some people who believe in that process. There are a lot of people who believe in that step of living together and moving in together, and without having to have any type of commitment. So what is your limit when it comes to that? Another question to ask: what issues or inner conflicts are you dealing with this process of getting to know yourself? That's a huge question to ask, because that's a huge thing that will ultimately affect the relationship at some point. What inner conflicts are you dealing with? What inner unresolved issues, that you are still dealing with today, present day? How much, it can also be answered or asked, it can also be asked in the sense of, how much do things from your past still affect you today? Because a lot of, understandably so, the past is what makes a person who they are today, whether it's the good points from the past or the bad points from the past, or let me say the negative things from a person's past. It makes them who they are today. So are you still dealing with inner turmoil, inner conflicts, inner questions, unresolved issues that you have not dealt with, that you have just brushed under the rug, that you have just, put a band-aid over and haven't actually handled? Those inner conflicts, those unresolved issues are going to be, it can also be labeled baggage. The inner baggage that you bring with you into a relationship because you have not taken the time to deal with it. And sometimes people don't know to deal with it because they're not aware of it. So with getting to know yourself, asking that question, what is it that I'm still dealing with? What issues am I still holding on to? What issues am I still sensitive about from my past that's still affecting me today as an adult? So ask that question and really dig deep and think about that and figure it out. What's your definition? Another question to help get to know yourself, especially involving relationships or marriages. What's your definition of love and family? What does that look like to you? What examples have you had growing up? What examples have you been able to actually experience and see for yourself or live firsthand? What's your idea of love? Does love look like having or sharing, or let's say it this way, buying or receiving gifts? Or does love look like spending quality time together? Does love look like, there are some people who believe love is putting their hands on you. There are a lot of different definitions of love out there in this day and age. There are a lot of definitions of love that people sign up on or sign up for, and you need to figure out, what does love and family mean to you? So therefore, if you see something else in the other person, then if that love is not resonating with you, then you know that that's not what will be conducive for you. Learn learn who you are. Learn how or what makes you feel loved as an individual. Another question when it comes to relationships and, getting to know yourself before jumping into a relationship. Money. What is your relationship to money? Are you a spender? Are you a budgeter? What's your relationship with money? Because that will be important to have that discussion with someone that you're considering being in a relationship with. Money, as I said in the last week's episode, when it comes to money and finances, that's one of the top 2 reasons behind relationships ending, marriages ending in divorce, is because people never actually discussed people never actually discussed money. And how will the money be handled? How will the accounts be handled? Does money, will you guys share an account? Will it be a joint account? Will you guys be considered equal account holders? Or will one person in the relationship control and have all access to the money, and you end up getting a stipend, or you end up getting what will be like an allowance? There are a lot of relationships, and I don't want to say all, but for the majority, there are a lot of relationships and marriages out there where women have no access to the account, no access to the funds. Their names aren't on the ownership documents. Their names are not on the deed for the house. Their names are nowhere on the actual paperwork when it comes to who can make a decision and who can make moves. And it starts off okay, as far as like the woman being okay with that. But then as time goes on, it has never failed. As time goes on, and as time or after time has been put into that relationship or that marriage, that woman does become a little resentful, and then starts to want to make changes. But it's like, how can you expect, of course you can expect it, but how can you expect that person, that guy, that man to all of a sudden after a decade or a couple of decades now being willing to just, put you make changes in how things have been going. I'll say it that way. When they have held that position for so long, it does happen. There are a lot of men who will make that change. There are a lot of men who will, start including their wives or their lady into the financial decisions, if she brings it up. But there are a lot who don't. They will push back. Even if they're not doing it directly, they will push back. You'll start, seeing a change in attitude, a change in personality. So know who you are. Get to know yourself first. Know who you are going into a relationship and going into a marriage, so you can resolve those things or have those things figured out at the beginning, and not try to just get into a relationship and then hope to change it later on. So those are some of the questions that you can ask yourself. You may ask right now, well, how do I get to know myself? What can I do to get to know myself? There are so many ways to answer, to help you answer that question. Here are just a few, 2 or 3, really quickly. I'll name so this episode won't go on too much longer. But first, being honest with yourself, and you do that by being aware of things, being aware of who you are, being aware of what makes you tick, being aware of what raises your temperature, what makes you sad, what makes you happy, what makes you smile, what makes you cringe. Being honest with yourself about those things as it happens, and not necessarily, faking anything or putting on this facade. Being fully aware of who you are on a daily basis. That's one of the first things that you can do to help yourself get to know yourself. Another thing you can do is those questions that I asked earlier, is ask yourself the hard questions, those layered questions, those detailed below the surface questions. Literally sit down, or as you're driving, if you're sitting in traffic, or if you're going on a walk or a run, or if you're at the gym, or whatever you're doing, if you're in the kitchen cooking a meal, ask yourself the questions, the hard questions, the questions that we tend to shy away from, the questions that we tend to avoid. Ask those detailed, layered questions, and be honest with the answers that you give yourself, and don't shy away from it. And one last thing that you can do is have some alone time where there are no people around to distract you. And this includes even between dating. I know I did an episode on taking time between relationships, but this is why it's important, because it allows you to get to know you. It allows you to get to know yourself. Taking that time between dating, it allows you to resolve whatever may have gone on, whatever may have gone wrong in that prior relationship. You can resolve it before getting into that next relationship. But even before thinking of the next relationship, it allows you to flush out whatever baggage that could be collected from the current relationship. It will help you flush it out, deal with it, and get rid of it before moving forward. It allows you to make sure that you are back whole again, that you are back solid again, just as an individual. Do it for yourself. Get to know yourself for your own well-being. Get to know yourself for the benefit of benefiting you. It's not just to be a benefit to the next person, but start with you first. Put yourself first. That's not being selfish. Having a lot of people around all the time or someone always in your life doesn't allow you to spend that alone time to get to know you. It's just like it's a simple concept. If you're dating someone, if you meet someone out and you guys are meeting for the purpose of dating, you're doing what? You're spending time with that person to get to know them. And then time is also being spent with that person over the phone, whether it be text or actual conversation. But you're interacting with that individual in order to get to know them. So it's the same exact thing with getting to know yourself. Spend time with yourself to get to know yourself. If you're spending time with someone else to get to know them, spend time with yourself to get to know you, to get to know yourself. And it's not there are a lot of people who don't do that well. And it's usually for a deeper rooted reason. There are a lot of people who are not comfortable or not happy with who they are. And so they don't like to be by themselves. They literally will make sure that someone is always around in order to distract them from their own thoughts, in order to distract them from from spending time by themselves with themselves, because they don't like who they are. But why continue to live a life like that when you can do something about it and just deal with whatever the traits are that you don't like about yourself? Deal with it and be done with it, instead of constantly pushing off that what do I want to say? Instead of pushing off that responsibility, instead of pushing off that action of, dealing with that unhappy trait that you may have within yourself, and it constantly is going to keep coming to the surface, because it's not just going to go away. That's not what happens in life. It's not just going to go away. You actually have to deal with it. So be mindful, again, being aware of if you are constantly having someone in your surroundings, if you're constantly having someone around you, being aware of that. Again, that was the first step, awareness. And just simply being honest with yourself. Why ask that question? Why do I always have to be in a relationship? Why do I jump from one relationship to the next? Or even if it's not relationships, why is it that I always have to have a friend or a neighbor or an associate? Why do I always have to have someone around me? Why do I have to have someone in my space? That's one of those hard questions, those layered questions that people avoid. But asking those questions and being honest with the answers to the questions are what will put you on the right path of getting to know yourself. And when you get to know yourself, you are then a better individual for your next relationship. It's like a domino effect, but in a positive way. So consider that. I will leave it here with this particular episode of getting to know yourself just in general as a person and before going into the next relationship. So thank you so much for tuning in to this particular episode and this channel, the I Give Life to Life podcast channel with yours truly, Coach Nrgy. Make sure that you comment below and share, and go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, hit the like button, or go ahead and rate. Give me that 5-star rating if you think this information was valuable. Other than that, you guys, I will see you next week, and I hope to talk to you soon. And as always, keep smiling.